The goddess got into graduate school, and my life hit rock bottom. On the day we broke up, I bought a ticket back to the fishing village, so broke that even the bucket was borrowed. As a result, on my very first time out on the mud flats, I dug up a zebra mantis shrimp full of roe. The guy buying seafood said, "This thing can sell for 300 a jean during the closed fishing season." My insignificant love affair suddenly seemed like a closed chapter. My name is Jiang Han. I simped for Jiang for 4 years and gave her everything I could. On the day she got into graduate school, she dumped me without hesitation. I didn't cry or make a scene. I bought a ticket back to Jawa Island. From a coach to a minibus, then to a rural bus. After finally making it to the pier, I ran into strong sea gusts, and sailings were suspended. I waited around near the pier for 2 days before finally boarding the ferry back to the island. When I was little, I got seasick. If the wind picked up even a little, the rocking made me miserable, and people on the island laughed at me for it. But now, with the salty sea breeze pouring in, I felt especially at ease. 3 hours later, I returned to Shajiang village on Jawa Island. Along the way, all the aunties I ran into greeted me warmly, and I smiled back. But after walking all the way through, all I saw were old people and children. The young people had basically all gone out to work. There were only a few people my age left on the island. I felt an indescribable emotion in my heart. When I stepped into the house, everything was still the same as before. A black and white TV, a tape recorder longer than my arm, and a pull-string radio mounted on the wall. The windows were wooden framed too, opening outward with a push. Anyone who didn't know better would think they'd traveled back to the 1980s. But thinking about it, that was normal enough. The island's transportation is inconvenient, and it lags far behind the outside world. My family was poor, my sister got married early, and I went away to college, so most of the things were still from many years ago. I went back to my room. There were 2 celebrity posters on the wall. I tore them down and found a mattress pad and quilt in the cabinet. I thought they would smell musty, but they didn't. They still carried the scent of sunshine. My sister must come back often to air them out for me. Since our parents passed away, my sister and I have depended on each other all these years. A large part of my first-year college tuition was paid by her. In the following years, she still wanted to give me living expenses, but I refused to take it, and she insisted on stuffing it into my hands. I owe my sister too much and don't know when I'll ever be able to repay her. My stomach growled. I'd only eaten a tea egg before boarding the boat that morning. There are no supermarkets or produce markets around here, so having a small shop is already pretty good. I went to the shop and bought a pack of instant noodles, a bag of eggs, and a pack of sausages. There was no electric kettle at home, so covered in dust and grime, I got a fire going, cooked the instant noodles, cracked in 2 eggs, and added 2 sausages. There was a small hole by the wood-burning stove, so while I was cooking the noodles, I scooped some water and boiled it, then poured it into a thermos. It had been too long since I'd done this kind of work, and by the time I carried the noodles to the table, I was already drenched in sweat. That was when my sister Jiang Feng pushed the door open and came in. Both of us froze for a moment and almost spoke at the same time. "What are you doing here?" I pulled out a chair for her to sit on, then took out my diploma. I graduated. Jiang Feng stared at the diploma from Nanjing University, fascinated beyond words. But her smile suddenly froze. I knew what she wanted to ask, so I simply said it outright. Tian got into graduate school and broke up with me. My sister opened her mouth, but so many words got stuck in her throat. Tian and I are both from this village. We were childhood sweethearts. Neither family was well off. A large part of her living expenses during college came from money I earned working part-time. Now that she got into graduate school, she turned her back on me. My sister watched my expression closely, and fortunately, I still seemed fairly calm. "You've already graduated from college, you're educated. What can't you do in the future?" I sighed. "Sis, do you remember what major I studied?" "Financial management." She had heard people say that graduates of this major all go to big companies and become executives. "Sis, I don't want to hide it from you. This major does sound prestigious, but the people who choose this major, basically, they all come from families that own factories or companies, and after finishing school they just go home to take over the business. For someone like me, graduation means unemployment." My sister was so anxious she was almost scratching her head. "Then what are you planning to do?" "I'll stay back here for a few days first, then think about what to do next. At least staying in my hometown means I don't have to worry about rent every month. Then just stay here with peace of mind. If you need or lack anything, tell me. Sis, I can take care of myself." My sister was very pleased and felt that I had grown up. She asked me to go to her house for dinner that night, but I didn't go. She's already helped me more than enough over the years. My brother-in-law might not say it out loud, but he already has his thoughts. Besides, their family isn't well off either, and they still have 2 daughters to raise. How could I keep troubling them? My sister thought I was just being lazy again. It's only a 10+ minute walk between the 2 villages. I just couldn't be bothered to move my legs. She said she'd come by next time and cook me something good. After my sister left, I slowly finished my instant noodles. It was boring staying by myself, so I went out for a walk. The sun was strong, so I put the bamboo hat hanging on the door over my head. People on our island basically all wear this kind of dompa hat for sun and rain protection. Even so, everyone is still a shade darker than people from inland areas. I'm not fair either, but I'm tall and good-looking, and being a little darker actually makes me look more energetic. Before I knew it, I had walked to the seaside. A lot of inland people think every seashore has golden beaches and blue water, but in fact many places don't have beaches. What I was standing on now was a mudflat, and looking out, it was a stretch of dark muck. When I was little, I even rolled around on the mudflat before and got beaten by my sister a few times after going home covered in mud. Looking at the seawater constantly receding, I thought to myself that the tide was going out pretty early today. Old Uncle Luo beside me walked over holding his enamel mug. Stop looking, it's a neap tide. When it's a spring tide, the seawater recedes farther, and there's more to gather from the sea. With a neap tide, it's the opposite. I wasn't interested in spring tides or neap tides anyway. I wasn't here to forage by the sea. But I still noticed 2 little brats busy on the mudflat. One was shoveling away with a sand spade, and the other was scraping away with an iron rake. They had brought quite a bit of gear, but hadn't dug up much. I couldn't help letting out a laugh. The 2 kids stopped what they were doing and looked up at me as if they'd been humiliated. Hey, what are you laughing at? Whose kids are you? My dad is Wang Fa. My dad is Li Tu. I froze for a moment. Wang Fa and Li Tu are 3 or 4 years older than me, and their kids are already this big. Don't think we'll be afraid of you just because you know our dads. Our dads have both gone out to work, so you can't see them anyway. So they were left behind children. Most of the people still left in the village now are basically in this situation. It's inconvenient for parents to take their kids with them to work, so they can only leave them with the grandparents. They're all pitiful children. I glanced at their bucket, and the 2 little brats immediately shielded it. You're a grown man. You're not thinking of robbing us, are you? I was speechless. Do I really look that bad? I really had no interest in the few mud snails and hermit crabs in the bucket. Just then, my head suddenly spun, and I felt a little nauseated too. After it passed, I blinked and realized my eyesight had improved a lot. Over the past few years in college, my vision had declined somewhat. But now I could see everything clearly. Right after that, there was a ding in my head. Host facing the sea. Infinite scanning system awakened. Would the host like to load it? Infinite scanning system? A cheat ability? I chose to load it without the slightest hesitation. A moment later, I looked toward the muddy flat again and was completely dumbfounded. I could see what was beneath the mud flat. There was nothing on the surface, but all kinds of shellfish were hidden under the mud. And what delighted me most was that there were also quite a few mantis shrimp. The only problem was that the scanning range was a bit short, visually about 10 meters. I tried running a bit along the shore, and the visible range actually moved with me. Looking at those mantis shrimp under the mud, I couldn't help swallowing. Was I about to get rich? Several ways of eating mantis shrimp had already popped into my head. When I was away at college, seafood was too expensive, and I never could bring myself to eat it. The 2 kids saw my face turn green, then white, then red, and got a little scared. Uncle, are you okay? You're not going to blackmail our grandpa and grandma for money, are you? I was still immersed in the joy of the system awakening, and hearing that instantly annoyed me. Since when did I become uncle? Watch your mouth. Why would I extort 2 little kids like you? I glanced at the 2 buckets again and wanted to borrow one, but they were guarding them too closely. As a grown man, it wouldn't look good if I made children cry on my first day back in the village. Forget it, I'll go home and get my own. I looked around the house and found an eel tong. The metal parts were rusty, and the screw was stiff too, but it was barely usable. I tossed the eel tong into the bucket and headed out carrying it. When I got back to the mudflat, the 2 kids were still there. They exchanged a look, then eyed me warily again, afraid I'd snatch their little catch of mud snails and hermit crabs. I couldn't be bothered with them and deliberately walked a little farther away. I took off my shoes and rolled up my pant legs. I was very careful stepping onto the mudflat, afraid the shells buried in the mud would cut my feet. They were wearing wading boots. I had nothing. When I saw a puddle, I scooped some seawater into the bucket so the mantis shrimp wouldn't die too quickly once I put them in. Wang Xiaobao scratched his head and still reminded me. My grandma said today is a neap tide. There's not much to find. Don't you see there aren't any adults out tide pooling today? It's only the two of them who came over to play. They thought I wasn't all that bright. Working this hard on a neap tide today is definitely a waste of effort. As I waded through the muddy water, I said with a grin, "Who says you can't go tide pooling during a neap tide? Today Big Brother will open your eyes." The two kids rolled their eyes at me. Yeah, keep bragging. I could also say I can dig up mantis shrimp. The corner of my mouth twitched. Wang Xiaobao had actually guessed it right. It really was mantis shrimp. Then Big Brother will dig up some mantis shrimp and show you. The two kids burst out laughing, thinking I was bragging through the roof. Using my X-ray vision, I walked over to a mantis shrimp burrow. In most other places, there were at most one or two within a 10-meter range, and in many places there were none at all. But in this spot, the mantis shrimp were practically piled up. I stopped moving. When the two little brats saw me stop, they instead came over carrying their buckets. Right in front of them, I scraped away the mud on top and revealed a very large air hole. The two kids' eyes immediately widened. What a huge air hole. Where we're from, the bigger the air hole, the bigger the catch underneath. There was very likely something big down there. The two kids were a little jealous. This guy's luck was way too good. He found such a big air hole with one flip. With a hole that big, it's a razor clam king, right? Wang Xiaobao said. A razor clam king wouldn't make a hole that big. It's probably a big green crab, Li Xiaoya said. It's a razor clam king. It's a green crab. The two started arguing in my ear. My head hurt. What if I said it was a zebra mantis shrimp? The two little brats froze. Wang Xiaobao was the quicker to react. You're fooling kids. How could it possibly be a zebra mantis shrimp? Li Xiaoya also said. We don't even have zebra mantis shrimp around here. One sea island isn't the same as another. Some places have more green crabs, while some have more sea cucumbers. In our area, the most common things are shellfish and snails. You can run into mantis shrimp while tide pooling too, but zebra mantis shrimp are too rare and are usually very hard to catch. It's July right now, the fishing moratorium season, and all fishing boats are forbidden from going out to fish. At a time like this, wild catch sells for a very high price. Ordinary wild mantis shrimp can sell for a bit over 100 yuan per jean, and a rare item like zebra mantis shrimp, if it has roe, goes for at least 300 yuan per jean. The two kids definitely didn't believe there was a zebra mantis shrimp under that air hole, but they both really wanted to know what was down there. I was in a bind too. This shrimp was hiding deep. The eel tongs brought from home couldn't pry it open either. I looked at the shovel in Li Xiaoya's hand. Let me use your shovel. Li Xiaoya was a bit reluctant, but after dawdling for a while, he still handed it to me. I used the shovel to remove most of the mud on top, and even dug out 2 moon snails from the middle. I squeezed the water out of the snails and tossed one into each of their buckets. The two little brats were a bit touched. They had thought I was a bad person, but didn't expect me to share the snails with them. It would have been better if they'd squeezed the water out themselves. The water inside the snail meat shoots out like a water gun, which is really fun. I shoveled a few more times. When there were only a bit over 30 centimeters left, I stopped. If I kept digging, the mantis shrimp would run. The scan showed that this burrow was U-shaped and connected to another opening. Seeing that the shrimp was about to escape to the other side, I didn't care about anything else, rolled up my sleeves, and stuck my hand straight in. Wang Xiaobao was so scared that he covered his eyes. How could this guy dare do that? If it were a big crab, wouldn't sticking a hand in there get it pinched off by the claws? Just imagining it made him ache. He didn't know how much time had passed, but the scream he expected never came. He moved his hand away and secretly opened his eyes a slit, and saw me calmly pulling my arm out. Came up empty. Just as he was about to laugh at me, he saw that I was gripping a mantis shrimp in my hand. Wow, it really is a zebra mantis shrimp. Li Xiaoya cried out. That shrimp really did have zebra stripes, and it wasn't small either. People by the sea all know that among the same kind of seafood, the bigger it is, the more valuable it is. Look at this shrimp. It must weigh at least 250 to 300 grams. This shagu even has roe. Li Xiaoya had the better eye. Shagu is mantis shrimp. Through the semi-transparent shell, you could see the orange-red stuff inside. This one has roe. Ones with roe are worth more. Although it's not fully packed with roe, it's already extremely rare. Wang Xiaobao sucked in a breath of cold air. If only he had found this shrimp. He estimated that this single one might sell for 200 or 300 yuan. 200 or 300 yuan. How many toys could that buy at the shop? I raised my head and looked at them. Well, the two kids looked at each other, both feeling that my gaze was full of mockery. Maybe because they felt ridiculed, they picked up their buckets and ran off. I was speechless. This made me look like some kind of big villain. Actually, I was nervous too just now. My luck has never been very good, so I didn't think something as good as a system would happen to me. Although I really had seen clearly what was under the mudflat, I still suspected it was an illusion. But now, looking at this fresh, lively zebra mantis shrimp with roe in the bucket, my heart was finally mostly at ease. I kept catching them. There were other zebra mantis shrimp here too, with one air hole after another exposed. Anyway, my hands were already filthy beyond recognition, so I simply reached into the holes one by one and fished them out. Mantis shrimp have spines on both sides, and if you don't use the right force when grabbing them, you'll get jabbed too. Luckily, with the scan, I could always cleverly avoid those 2 rows of spines. Aside from the first one, the others also had zebra stripes, just a bit small, though they still weighed around 100 to 150 grams. I didn't pull out the smaller ones. People by the sea live off the sea and believe in not wiping everything out. I kept walking across the mudflat, wanting to see if there was anything else. As I walked, my steps suddenly stopped. Damn, zebra mantis shrimp again. There weren't many, but they were absurdly huge. My heartbeat suddenly sped up. Just like before, I reached into the holes one by one and fished them out. Each one was bigger than the last. I lifted the biggest one in my hand and weighed it, heavy and solid. One of them already weighed over 500 grams. Zebra mantis shrimp over 500 grams have double the unit price. If there was any downside, it was that it didn't have roe. Even so, he had already gained a great harvest. He also caught a few ordinary large mantis shrimp. As for the ones hiding deep, he chose to let them go. Digging such deep holes was tiring for him too. When he saw the mud snails, he hesitated for a moment, then the next second shoveled all of them into his bucket. Although mud snails aren't as expensive as mantis shrimp, he loves eating them. Most importantly, these mud snails were all clustered together, just lying there right on the surface. He picked them up without much effort. He realized another benefit of this system of his. Even things on the surface, it allowed him to see more clearly than other people. This mudflat was pitch black, and many places were covered with water. If people didn't look carefully, many of them wouldn't even notice there were mud snails on it. But within a range of 10 meters from where he looked, the mudflat was in a kind of semi-transparent state, making it easy to distinguish from the surrounding seafood. When Jiang Han lifted the bucket, he found it was already very heavy. Seeing that it was getting darker and darker and the tide was about to come in, Zhang Han carried his bucket to a place with more water, washed the mud off his feet with seawater, then left the mudflat carrying his shoes. When Jiang Han ate lunch, it was already 2:30 in the afternoon. On top of that, with his sister's visit, it was already after 3 by the time he finished eating. People in the village eat dinner early. After Jiang Han was delayed at the seaside, the aunties, grannies, and old men in the village had already started strolling around to aid digestion. Seeing Jiang Han coming from the seaside barefoot, they all crowded around. Although they knew there usually wasn't anything good during a neap tide, they were too bored to resist. Find anything good? Bucktooth Auntie looked at Jiang Han with a grin. This college student does look energetic, but things like foraging by the sea are better forgotten. They say college students from the city can't even tell scallions from Chinese chives. Bucktooth Annie had only asked casually, but Jiang Han nodded. The people around him were stunned. There really was something good? It couldn't just be a few mussels, could it? When foraging by the sea around here, what they encountered most often were mussels. There were so many mussels that they couldn't finish eating them, so they would dry them. The shelled and dried mussel meat is also called dried mussels. Many times, just hearing the words mussels and dried mussels made them want to throw up. This group of people were getting old, and their eyesight wasn't very good. When they crowded around the bucket, all they could see was a dark mass. When they saw clearly what it was, they all gasped sharply. Oh my, perhaps because they were too shocked. Bucktooth Auntie and Kumquat Auntie's heads even bumped into each other. There are mantis shrimp even during a neap tide today, and they're actually zebra mantis shrimp? This is going to make a fortune. Oh, there's even one in here with red roe. Right now it's the fishing ban period, so wild seafood is in especially short supply. Even ordinary mantis shrimp can sell for over 100 a jean, right? As for these zebra mantis shrimp, since they rarely saw them, they couldn't say for sure what the price was. They figured 200 a jean was definitely possible, and if they were bolder, over 300 was also possible. There must be around a dozen jean of stuff in Jiang Han's bucket. Although it was mixed with ordinary mantis shrimp and mud snails, they felt this batch was definitely worth over 1,000. I think it hasn't even been 2 hours since he went out, and in such a short time, he's made as much as several days' wages. Several days' wages? You really think our little fishing village is some big city outside? The people beside him immediately fell silent. That's why they say there's no future in staying in a fishing village. Jiang Han smiled at them. I just got lucky today. Hearing that, The villagers watching felt much better inside. This kid Jiang Han must have really stumbled into dumb luck today. Jiang Han felt around on himself and pulled out a pack of Lacune. He rarely smoked usually. He had bought this pack on the day he broke up with Yi Tian. But after smoking one cigarette, he didn't smoke anymore. Was he really going to mope over a woman like that? There really was no need. He pulled out a cigarette and lit one for old Zhang. Uncle Zhang, is Uncle Ermao's family still buying seafood? When Jiang Han was little, Zhang Ermao's family bought seafood. When he was little and went tide pooling, he even sold conches to Jiang Ermao's family twice. Old Zhang straightened his back, and even a college student like Jiang Han had come to ask him questions, which showed just how much he knew. They've always been buying. What you've got here can be sold to him just fine. Jiang Han nodded. Thanks, Uncle Zhang. A whole group of people followed behind Jiang Han in a grand procession again, following him all the way to Jiang Ermao's front door. They were all very curious how much this half bucket of seafood could sell for. Jiang Ermao was startled when he saw such a large group coming over. And then he spotted Jiang Han in the middle of the crowd. Jiang Ermao and Jiang Han both had the surname Jiang, but they were not related at all. Weren't you off at college? Why are you back tide pooling again? If he remembered correctly, today was a neap tide. There shouldn't be much catch. He lowered his head to look into Jiang Han's bucket, and at that glance, he was so shocked he nearly jumped up. Zebra mantis shrimp. Jiang Han nodded faintly. Jiang Ermao felt that someone who had gone to college really was different from mud-legged people like them, finding such a big catch, and he only responded with a calm sound. He looked over those zebra mantis shrimp a few more times. They were extremely lively, unmistakably pure wild-caught. Quite a few of them were around 100 grams. The others varied quite a bit in size. He estimated that there were about 5 over 250 grams. The smallest one among them was still carrying roe. He took out the biggest zebra mantis shrimp one by one and weighed them on the scale. 295 grams, 315 grams, 460 grams, 435 grams. The largest one actually weighed 600 grams. Jiang Ermao sucked in a sharp breath. These 5 mantis shrimp would be top-grade goods anywhere. They could all be sold individually. Since we're all from the same village, I'll give you the real price too. How about this? This whole bucket counts as 1,500. The villagers watching were all stunned. They had thought it would be over 1,000, but they hadn't expected it could sell for as much as 1,500. Jiang Han, you're way too lucky, aren't you? To go tide pooling during a neap tide and still get a catch worth over 1,000. So college students really are different from us. Even their luck is especially good. No expression could be seen on Jiang Han's face. The villagers knew the prices of ordinary seafood, but for relatively rare things, they had no idea what the price actually was. Jiang Han wasn't sure either, so while he was at the beach he had already checked the prices. For mantis shrimp over 250 grams, the smallest one, because it was carrying roe, could sell for 300 each. The 300-gram one could sell for 200 no problem. The 400-gram one was already close to 450 grams, so it could also sell for nearly 300 yuan. The 460-gram one could sell for over 500, which was also possible. That already made 1,300. The 300-gram one could sell for 200 no problem. The 400-gram one was already close to 450 grams, so it could also sell for nearly 300 yuan. The 460-gram one could sell for over 500, which was also possible. That already made 1,300. And that one over 500 grams, with that weight right there, the unit price would also double, and it could sell for over 1,000 each. As for those smaller mantis shrimp, they could also sell for around 300 to 400. Plus the ordinary mantis shrimp he had caught, which were all quite large. Added together, they were also worth about 300 yuan. By Jiang Han's calculation, all this stuff together was worth nearly 3,000 yuan. But the prices he had found online were all retail prices. Purchase prices definitely weren't calculated that way. No matter how he figured it, his haul was still worth 2,200 to 2,300 yuan. Just now, Jiang Ermao had weighed all those zebra mantis shrimp over 250 grams separately. It was obvious he knew very well that the prices of those few were different from the smaller ones. Uncle Ermao, how about raising it a bit more? After all, Jiang Ermao was a generation older than him. There were some things Jiang Han wouldn't say too bluntly in front of the villagers. Aunt Li's face turned pale first. Jiang Han, are all you college students really that bold-hearted? It's already 1,500, and that's still not enough? Kumquat God also said, yeah, Jiang Han. This 1,500 is enough for my man to toil for more than half a month. It's really not a small amount. Jiang Han knew the people in his village too well. To say they were simple and honest, they truly were. If something happened to any family, the whole village would come lend a hand. But when everyone was poor, if one family suddenly started doing well, the people in the village would easily get jealous. It was as if Jiang Han taking a little more would be like cutting flesh from them. Jiang Ermao hesitated for a moment. How about this? Han, you're a junior, so I'll add another 50. The corner of Jiang Han's mouth twitched. If it was only for these 50 yuan, he really couldn't be bothered to haggle with him. Uncle Ermao, I think since I was able to get into a key university, my luck should be pretty good. Doesn't beachcombing rely on luck? Give me a reasonable price, and when I have good goods next time, I'll still come to you. 1,600, not a cent more. Jiang Ermao's face was already showing some impatience. In the whole of Shajiang village, his was the only family buying seafood. If Jiang Han didn't sell to him, was he supposed to wait for all his seafood to die? The price of live seafood and dead seafood is completely different. The sea had been closed these past few months, and the villagers' luck had been bad. He hadn't taken in any good goods for several days in a row. He figured Jiang Han would only stay in the village for 2 or 3 days before leaving. So he didn't believe talk like coming to him next time with good goods. Now that he'd run into this, naturally he'd fleece him for as much as he could. Jiang Han smiled at Jiang Ermao. Uncle Ermao, I remember old Wang from my sister's village also buys goods. I think I can ask my sister to help me sell this little bit. Back when old Wang's family was building their house, both my brother-in-law and my sister went to help. Old Wang should give my sister a suitable price. Naturally, Jiang Han couldn't possibly ask his sister for help. If old Wang gave him a good price out of regard for his sister, wouldn't that be making his sister cash in a favor? There was no way he would trouble his sister over something like this. As for whether his sister and brother-in-law had helped when old Wang's family was building their house, he didn't know. He had only said it casually. Anyway, if even he didn't know, Jiang Ermao knew even less. Sure enough, Jiang Ermao's face turned pale. Jiawa Island wasn't big, but it still had 18 large villages. Pretty much every village had someone who bought goods. People in business had their own rules. People like them who bought seafood generally wouldn't take goods from outsiders to the village. If it wasn't handled properly, it could lead to a fight. But if Jiang Han gave the goods in his hands to his sister and his sister helped him sell them, then it wouldn't count as buying goods from someone outside the village. He also knew that person old Wang. The prices he offered for goods were indeed much higher than his. On top of that, Jiang Han's sister and brother-in-law had helped him before, so the price would definitely be even higher. Seeing that Jiang Han was about to leave carrying the bucket, Jiang Ermao really panicked. He glanced at the villagers watching, then pulled Jiang Han into the house and shut the door. Jiang Ermao's house had been renovated, and the family's circumstances were far better than Jiang Han's old house, by who knew how much. Uncle Ermao, what are you doing? Jiang Ermao made a shushing gesture. You know perfectly well what the people in the village are like. I'll give you 2,000 now, but you absolutely can't tell anyone else. Otherwise, the villagers would all say his purchase price was too low. When he saw Jiang Han smile at him again, Jiang Ermao felt terribly flustered. 2,300 should do it, right? Jiang Han still didn't speak, just kept smiling like that. Jiang Ermao gritted his teeth again. 2,500, not a cent more. Deal. Jiang Han immediately agreed without hesitation. This price was already higher than he had expected. Jiang Ermao was about to regret it to death. 2,500. How had he let that slip out of his mouth? But he quickly adjusted his mindset. Even though he was making a little less, at least he wouldn't lose money. No matter what, he couldn't let old Wang from the neighboring village get it for cheap. Jiang Han happily set down the bucket. When he went outside, all the villagers crowded around him. Jiang Han, how much did you sell it for? Jiang Han smiled brightly. Why don't you just ask Uncle Ermao? Jiang Han said as he walked away. Jiang Ermao felt bitter inside. The internet always said that fresh college graduates were flowers raised in a greenhouse who understood nothing, but someone like Jiang Han had practically become a shrewd old hand. Jiang Han didn't sell the mud snails. Even if he sold that small amount, it would only be worth a little over 10 or 20 yuan. He might as well keep them to eat himself. He didn't like stir-fried mud snails, so he preserved them with salt. Ding, zebra mantis shrimp has been sold. You have obtained 2,500 system points. You can use 2,500 system points to exchange for a 5-meter scanning range. Exchange now? Jiang Han hadn't expected that the scanning range could be increased. 2,500. Wasn't that exactly the money he had just made from selling the mantis shrimp? If he chose to exchange, did that mean the money he had just earned would be gone? I won't exchange. Invalid choice. Exchanging scanning space for you now. Exchange successful. Your system points are now 0. Exchange successful. You can now scan areas within a 15-meter range. Damn. Jiang Han wanted to curse. He had originally thought his system was quite polite, even asking for his opinion before doing anything. But it turned out that asking had been completely pointless. He quickly took out his phone and checked his balance. Fortunately, the 2,500 yuan was still there. In other words, however much he sold for in real life, he would gain the same amount in system points. Deducting system points would not affect the amount of money he had in real life. How much will it cost to increase the range next time? The system didn't respond. Jiang Han asked again, how many points will it take to increase the scanning range next time? You are still 2,500 points away from increasing to the next 5-meter range. Jiang Han understood. According to the system's setup, it should be that for every 2,500 yuan he earned, he would correspondingly gain 2,500 system points, and then he could exchange them for a 5-meter scanning range. If he earned 25,000 yuan, he could increase the scanning range by 50 meters. Jiang Han suddenly became much more confident. Looking at it this way, staying in his hometown to build a future wasn't that difficult after all. Jiang Han casually dealt with dinner, planning to take a walk to help digest it, and pick up some supplies while he was at it. The house used a wood-burning stove, and for a grown man like him, starting a fire was too much trouble. He planned to buy an induction cooker or an electric cooking pot or something. He also needed to buy tools for sea foraging. No one knew how many years the tools at home had been around. They should have been replaced long ago. As soon as Zhang Han stepped outside, he heard a familiar voice. "Brother Han, you're back." Zhang Haidai, with his shaved head, quickly ran toward Jiang Han. Jiang Han froze for a moment. He hadn't seen Zhang Haidai for many years. In the year Jiang Han was in the second year of high school, something happened to Zhang Haidai. Zhang Haidai got into a group fight by the seaside, and one person's head was smashed open, leaving him a half-paralyzed wreck. It was chaotic at the time, and no one even knew who had hit whom. Anyway, everyone else had parents pulling strings for them. Only Zhang Haidai was left on his own. His parents didn't care about him at all. Jiang Han and Zhang Haidai had grown up together, and he didn't want anything to happen to Zhang Haidai. He had no money and didn't know anyone powerful. In the end, he found a newcomer online who had just gotten a lawyer's license, and he gave that newcomer all 800 yuan of the lucky money he had saved over the years. Just when Jiang Han was hoping things would take a turn for the better, Zhang Haidai's parents took money from the other families and had Zhang Haidai take all the blame. Jiang Han even went to see Zhang Haidai at the time and told him not to do anything stupid. But Zhang Haidai just grinned foolishly. "I can't make money for them to spend at home anyway, so it's not a bad thing if they can get money this way." Jiang Han was a bit frustrated at his failure to live up to expectations, but he still did his best to help Zhang Haidai. Not only was that rookie lawyer working hard, but Jiang Han, even in the academically demanding second year of high school, also made time to look through a lot of legal literature. After Jiang Han and that rookie lawyer kept analyzing and organizing the case, Zhang Haidai, who was originally going to be sentenced to 12 years, was ultimately sentenced to 8. It's only been 5 years now. "Hanji, I behaved well and got out early." Jiang Han pulled Zhang Haidai into a hug and rubbed his shaved head. "Good, it's good that you're out." Then he lifted his leg and kicked Zhang Haidai in the stomach. "Ouch, Hanji, why'd you kick me?" Zhang Haidai looked utterly innocent. "I'm making sure you remember this lesson. Do you really not treat your own future as a future?" Zhang Haidai also rubbed his own shaved head. "Ah, so that's what you're angry about. How could someone like me have any future?" Seeing that the expression on Jiang Han's face still hadn't improved, he edged closer again. "Even though my parents never cared about me, they still gave birth to me and raised me this big. I figure these 5 years in prison count as doing time on their behalf. I can be considered to have repaid the debt of giving birth to and raising me. Now the only person he's let down is Jiang Han." Jiang Han glanced at Zhang Haidai and felt that this kid wasn't beyond saving after all. He tossed him a cigarette. Zhang Haidai quickly lit it and took a drag. "Hanji, this cigarette's good. This is exactly the brand I like." In these 5 years, his parents had never visited him even once. Only Jiang Han went to see him every few months. The two brothers stood in the corner by the wall, puffing away together. Don't be fooled by how refined Jiang Han seems now, and how sensible and polite he is with people. When he was little, he did plenty of sneaky petty theft. The difference between him and Zhang Haidai was that Jiang Han didn't study very hard, yet still got good grades. Zhang Haidai didn't study hard, and his grades were always at the very bottom. As if thinking of something, Zhang Haidai pulled out 450 yuan from his clothes and stuffed it into Jiang Han's hand. "Hanji, I heard from people in the village that you're coming back to the village to build your future. Keep this money for now." As if afraid Jiang Han would refuse, Zhang Haidai ran off right after shoving the money over. Aunt Bucktooth happened to see this scene. Has something gone wrong with Haidai's head again? He just borrowed 500 yuan from his eldest uncle and then gave you 450. Jiang Han was stunned. This kid. Jiang Han walked toward Zhang Haidai's home and then heard Zhang Haidai talking on the phone at the doorway. Hey, another group fight? 2 packs of Huazi won't cut it. It has to be a carton of Lacoon. My Hanji likes smoking Lacoon, and I've got to give him half a carton. Ouch, who kicked me? Zhang Haidai turned his head to look and saw Jiang Han standing at the side with a dark expression. Zhang Haidai rubbed his waist with his hand and immediately broke into a happy grin. Hanji, why did you come over? Kid, do you never learn? Have you forgotten how you ended up in there? Zhang Haidai knew that Jiang Han had overheard his phone call just now. He rubbed his shaved head again. Actually, he didn't want to fight anymore either. But Hanji was back, and he always wanted to do something for Hanji. But there was nothing else he could do. The only thing anyone ever came to him for was fighting. Zhang Haidai glanced at Jiang Han cautiously, truly afraid that Jiang Han would be disappointed. Jiang Han wanted to kick Zhang Haidai again, but he just couldn't quite bring himself to do it. Those who are hateful must also have something pitiful about them. Zhang Haidai ought to be called Zhang Kelp. The staff member recording the name thought it was too casual and suggested changing Dai from Dai. Zhang Haidai was 12 years younger than his older brother. When his mother was pregnant with him, she didn't even know she was pregnant. His mother was fat, and the day before giving birth to Zhang Haidai, she still thought she had just gained more weight. As for that monthly thing women have not coming, she thought it was menopause. That night, the ship boss's boat reached the shore. It had originally been arranged for Zhang Haidai's father to go clean the boat, but Zhang Haidai's father was too lazy to go, so he sent his wife instead. Before she even finished cleaning, she gave birth to the child right on the boat. When the ship boss found out, he was furious. It was one thing that a woman had boarded the boat, but she had actually given birth on it. He felt he would have bad luck for the rest of his life, and in a fit of anger, he fired Zhang Haidai's father on the spot. And because those were the years of family planning, their family also had to pay quite a lot in fines. This couple blamed all their problems on Zhang Haidai, sincerely believing he was a jinx, so from childhood, he was either beaten or scolded. Zhang Haidai gradually grew into a real troublemaker too. Jiang Han wanted to return the 450 yuan to Zhang Haidai, but Zhang Haidai refused to take it. I have money. Fine, tell me how much money you have. I still have 50 yuan. Zhang Haidai looked as if 50 yuan were a huge sum. Jiang Han was so annoyed he laughed. Do you think you're more capable than me? Have I, Jiang Han, fallen so low that I need to be supported by you? Jiang Han spoke bluntly. But Zhang Haidai wasn't angry at all. Instead, he looked a little nervous. No, Hanji, that's not what I meant. You're a college student, and you got into such a good university. Of course you're the most capable. It's good that you know I'm capable. Jiang Han stuffed the money back into Zhang Haidai's hands again. Are you going tide pooling tomorrow? Jiang Han asked. What would I go tide pooling for? Isn't that exhausting? Zhang Haidai felt that if someone like him went tide pooling, the people in the village would laugh their heads off. This time, now that I'm back, I plan to develop things in our village. So I went tide pooling today, and I'll go again tomorrow. I just happened to be sure to help her right now. Zhang Haidai immediately patted his chest and promised, Hanji, don't worry, I've got plenty of strength. I'm full of endless brute force. Just put me to work however you want. Jiang Han was amused by him. What? You're not afraid of being tired now? Did I say tired just now? Then I must have misspoken. Jiang Han really had to hand it to him. Still going to fight? Zhang Haidai shook his head hard. I've got proper things to do now, so why would I still fight? He was too embarrassed to tell Jiang Han that when he had just gotten out of prison, he had also wanted to find a proper job. But the island was only so big. With a little asking around, everyone would know he had been in prison. Good jobs weren't for him, even if he wanted to sell his labor by working on a boat or at the docks. The ship bosses and the people at the docks still disliked him as unlucky. After a while, he started drifting through life again. Since being idle was still being idle anyway, instead of not knowing what to do, he might as well follow behind Hanji and help out. Jiang Han knew Zhang Haidai wasn't bad by nature. If only his parents had treated him a little better, he wouldn't have turned out like that. Alright, even between real brothers, accounts should be kept clear. Do you want wages or a share? Zhang Haidai knew that tide pooling didn't make much money right now. Maybe after a whole day, it would only be a few dozen yuan. If he took wages, wouldn't Hanji lose out badly? I'll just take a share. Give me 10%, that's enough. If Hanji earned 20 yuan, then taking 2 yuan would be enough for him. That was still better than drifting through life aimlessly. Fine, 10% it is. Jiang Han felt he was still pretty generous to his brother. "Where's your motorcycle? Bring it out for me to use." He was going to the town, and using a motorcycle would be much more convenient. He remembered this motorcycle was bought after Zhang Haidai went to prison. His parents had used the money those families gave them to buy quite a few nice things. The money for his eldest son's wedding also came from this. Later, the motorcycle was also given to his eldest son to use. Zhang Haidai felt a bit troubled, but when he heard Jiang Han wanted to use it, he didn't hesitate. At worst, when he got back, he'd get beaten up by his dad and mom, and then by his big brother too. Taking advantage of his family not paying attention, Zhang Haidai secretly stole the motorcycle out. Jiang Han drove the motorcycle, and Zhang Haidai sat behind him. "If your family asks you, just tell them I'm paying you wages. 80 yuan a day, got it?" Zhang Haidai felt that brother Han wanted to save face, and understood. "If anyone asks in the future, I'll tell them you give me 80 every day." Jiang Han nodded in satisfaction. Half an hour later, the two arrived in town. Jiang Han first went to the fishing gear shop. He needed to buy some tools for tiddapooling. The things at home were either rusted or worn out, really not easy to use. The first thing Jiang Han looked at was pliers. This kind of thing works better on rocky shores. The pliers in the shop were all eel pliers, but they could also be used to catch octopus and the like. Jiang Han bought 2 straight ones and 2 curved ones. After bargaining, the 4 pliers still ended up costing 150 yuan. He also bought 2 pairs of tall rain boots and a dozen pairs of tiddapooling gloves. These professional tiddapooling gloves are slip-resistant and puncture-resistant. But they are also consumables, so he bought extra. He also bought 2 sun-protective outfits. When going tiddapooling in the sun, not only does your face need sun protection, but exposed areas like your arms do too. Otherwise, the seaside sun will show you what it means for black and white to appear on the same person. If you go tiddapooling at night, you also need a headlamp. If you use a flashlight, you'll have one less hand to work with. He also bought an iron shovel and an iron rake. Both of these had short handles, so they were lighter to use and less likely to damage the seafood. He also bought a long-handled shovel. This one was heavier to use, but it would also save a lot of effort. Seeing Jiang Han holding a pile of things, the owner took the opportunity to pitch his wares, buy some fish traps. "We just got a new shipment, and the quality is very good." Seeing Jiang Han hesitate, the owner added, "Although it's currently the closed fishing season, you can put the fish traps in the reservoir or the river. Although the sea island is surrounded by water on all sides, it is rather short on freshwater resources. Jawa Island was an exception. There was a river on the island with abundant water flow, and also a reservoir. But the river and reservoir were both rather far from where Jiang Han lived. Since Jiang Han had chosen to return to his hometown, he didn't want to work himself too hard. But under the owner's repeated sales pitch, he still bought 6 not very large fish traps. He was going to need them next time anyway. He also bought a large can of bait attractant. As he was about to leave, he was attracted by something in the corner that looked like a long water gun. "Boss, what's this?" Seeing someone ask about it, the owner immediately became a little excited. The villagers were slow to accept new things. This item had been in stock for many days since it arrived, and no one had paid any attention to it. This is a shrimp pump, and it's very easy to use. Just aim this end at the air hole, and with one push, you can suck the thing out. Although it's called a shrimp pump, besides catching ordinary shrimp, it can also catch mantis shrimp and spoonworms. As soon as Jiang Han heard this, he liked it. It was much more convenient than using his hands directly or using a shovel. This shrimp pump won't suffocate the shrimp or crush them in half, will it? When they were children, they still used specially made rope nooses to catch mantis shrimp. Although that was also a useful tool, it was hard to control. If you pulled too lightly, you couldn't get the mantis shrimp out. If you pulled too hard, the mantis shrimp would be torn apart. How could it possibly break? This thing is much easier to use than a rope noose. It saves effort and is efficient, and it guarantees that whatever you pull out will still be lively and kicking. The owner thumped his chest and assured him, "Does this thing have an instruction manual?" The owner was stunned by the question. The people on the island were all country bumpkins. Very few people asked for an instruction manual when buying something. "Yes, I do. I'll find it for you." The owner found the manual and gave it to Jiang Han. After reading it, Jiang Han felt that this was simply a divine tool for tiddapooling. He didn't expect that after all these years away from shore foraging, even the tools for it had kept up with the times. "How much is this shrimp pump?" 80 yuan each. That's already the lowest price. I've already bought so many things. Can't you make it cheaper? The owner shook his head. "I really can't lower it any further." At first, he had planned to sell them for 200 each, but who knew no one would buy them for so long. And now he only hoped this stuff wouldn't end up stuck in his hands. Jiang Han gritted his teeth and still decided to buy two. Zhang Haidai asked Jiang Han if he wanted a dip net. Long-handled dip nets weren't expensive either, 10 yuan each. Jiang Han bought two more. Jiang Han only had 2,500 yuan on him, and he hadn't expected to spend 1,600 yuan in this fishing tackle shop alone. After walking out of the fishing tackle shop, Jiang Han saw a small shop next door with its doors closed. A cardboard sign hung at the entrance, buying seafood. There was also a phone number written underneath. Jiang Han saved the number, but didn't call. As they passed a newly opened restaurant, they saw a van pull up to unload goods. The proprietress herself was holding a notebook and recording the accounts. Zhang Haidai's gaze kept drifting toward her. Jiang Han looked over too. The proprietress looked to be about 27 or 28, with a curvy figure and a very mature charm. Jiang Han chuckled. "You like this type?" Zhang Haidai's face was already red, but he shook his head desperately. "No such thing. He's just an ex-convict. A person like him simply doesn't deserve to have a woman like him. If there really were a woman willing to be with him, that would only be ruining her." Zhang Haidai suddenly thought of something. "Brother Han, did you really break up with Yi Tiantian?" "Yeah. Why?" He could tell that Brother Han had truly liked Yi Tiantian, and he had always thought they would get married. A breakup is a breakup. Why ask so many whys? Seeing Zhang Haidai staring at the proprietress and almost unable to keep walking, he gave him a tug. He was really afraid the proprietress would rush over and call him a pervert. Jiang Han still had a lot of things left to buy. There was a small supermarket in town, and Jiang Han bought some daily necessities. The toy section and stationery section were together. Between the toys and stationery, Jiang Han bought two Barbie dolls. Knowing that Zhang Haidai liked smoking when they were paying at the counter, he picked up a pack of cigarettes and tossed it to Zhang Haidai. Seeing that it was Li Kun, Zhang Haidai hurriedly caught it. Sure enough, Brother Han still treated him best, even thinking of buying him cigarettes. "Let's just make do with this for now. When our circumstances improve later, I'll buy you better ones. This is already very good. I used to smoke 10 yuan cigarettes." Zhang Haidai felt that Brother Han was thinking far too optimistically. There was no way to get rich just by shore foraging. He was afraid that by then they wouldn't even earn back the money spent on this equipment. But seeing how confident Jiang Han looked, he couldn't bear to say anything discouraging. Anyway, good brothers face hardships together. Jiang Han also bought quite a lot of vegetables at the supermarket entrance. Among them were river snails and the like. The islanders had caught these themselves from the reservoir, where the water quality was exceptionally good. They tasted completely different from the snails sold outside, which were fished out of muddy ponds. These vegetables were all homegrown too. When they couldn't finish eating them at home, they brought them out to sell. It could be said that everything Jiang Han bought was pure, natural, pollution-free, and absolutely fresh good stuff. But because of that, all the money he had earned this time from selling mantis shrimp was used up. Watching how fast Jiang Han was spending money, Zhang Haidai was practically terrified. "Brother Han, I have money too. If you want to buy anything, just tell me." He could buy the remaining things. "That money of yours still belongs to your uncle. Once the tide goes out tomorrow, we'll go shore foraging." Zhang Haidai felt that whether they went shore foraging or not had nothing to do with whether they would starve to death. But when he saw Jiang Han's look, he stopped talking. When the two passed the gas station, Jiang Han pulled the car over. "Brother Han, why did we stop?" "Hand over 100. Without a second thought, Zhang Haidai took out 100 yuan. Jiang Han took the money and told the staff to fill up the motorcycle. "Hanji, what are you doing? There's still gas in it. We won't use much on this trip." They really hadn't used much. Motorcycles consume fuel differently from cars, and in the end Jiang Han only paid 12 yuan to fill it up. He returned the remaining 88 yuan to Zhang Haidai. "We won't be borrowing your elder brother's motorcycle forever. Since we've borrowed it, we can't let him look down on us." Zhang Haidai didn't say anything more. He knew Hanji was doing it for his own good. When they were almost at Jiang Han's house, Jiang Han saw Jiang Feng had come over again. Jiang Han stopped the motorcycle. After asking Zhang Haidai to help carry the things into the house, he told Zhang Haidai to ride the motorcycle back. "Sis, what brings you here?" Jiang Feng took another look at Zhang Haidai's departing figure. After all, Zhang Haidai had a record. She was afraid her younger brother would be led astray by Zhang Haidai, but then she thought her brother was already a grown man, and he had even graduated from a key university, so she felt she should still trust her brother's judgment. Better watch a little longer. Just because someone has been to prison doesn't mean they can't have a chance to turn over a new leaf. I brought you a sleeping mat and some mosquito coils. No one knew better than Jiang Feng what was in this house. The old mat had long since been too torn to use. With weather this hot, it's only comfortable to sleep with a mat laid on top of the mattress. Actually, it would be even cooler without the mattress. But the wooden bed was too hard, and Jiang Han was never used to sleeping on it. So in summer, Jiang Han would put a mat on top of the mattress. Jiang Han actually hadn't thought about mosquito coils. He rummaged through the pile of things he had just bought, then took out the 2 Barbie dolls. "They're for my nieces." Jiang Feng parted her lips, wanting to cry a little. Her little brother had really grown up and become sensible. It used to be her buying things for Jiang Han. She hadn't expected that now it would become Jiang Han buying things for her 2 children. Jiang Feng happily accepted them, but still said, "Why spend so much?" Jiang Han felt his sister was saying one thing and meaning another. After Jiang Feng left, Jiang Han discovered that the TV at home would no longer turn on. The tape recorder could still play cassettes, but he didn't really want to listen to that either. He wanted to listen to the radio even less. So in the end, he chose to sit under the electric fan and play on his phone. Although he didn't have air conditioning here, it also wasn't as hot as in the big cities. One electric fan was enough. When there was a sea breeze, he didn't even need to turn on the fan. Just opening the window and enjoying the sea breeze was enough to stop the sweating. The only drawback was the poor signal, so videos always buffered and stuttered. Jiang Han didn't know when he had fallen asleep. When he woke up, he was still a bit groggy. The first thing he did after turning on his phone was check the tide app. Elderly people living by the sea generally know how to calculate the tides. Jiang Han, however, didn't understand it. Fortunately, the internet is developed now, and you can look up anything. The app showed it very clearly. There were 2 tides today. The first was from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. The second was from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. It was already 7:20 a.m., and the time for going to the shore had already passed. Generally, there are 2 tide periods in a day, and sometimes there are even 3. But only one of those times is comfortable for Jiang Han. The other 1 or 2 times are either in the early morning or in the middle of the night. Jiang Han thought to himself, if he really made a living by foraging the shore, would he also have to go at those other times? Jiang Han thought about it for 2 minutes, and in the end chose to let things take their course. There were too few people in the village. There simply weren't any restaurants or breakfast shops. Jiang Han just made do with breakfast. Today's time for going to the shore was at 4 p.m., so at 3 o'clock he had lunch with Zhang Haidai. Zhang Haidai cooked in the afternoon, and his cooking was better than Jiang Han's. On top of that, the snails themselves were delicious and fresh. Without realizing it, Jiang Han ate an extra bowl of rice. This was so much tastier than the food he ate in the big city. After cleaning up and getting the tools for tida-pooling ready, the 2 of them set off. Because the weather was hot and they would be tida-pooling for a long time, they also brought old-fashioned military canteens with them. They went to the same mudflat Jiang Han had visited yesterday. In the past, very few villagers would come out tida-pooling during a neap tide. He didn't know if it was because they had been stimulated by Jiang Han. But when they arrived today, there were actually quite a few villagers on the mudflat. Aunt Bucktooth, Aunt Li, and Aunt Kumquat were all there. Even Old Master Luo and Old Zhang were there. Zhang Haidai found it strange. Holy crap, what's going on? He had never seen a neap tide this lively, and if he remembered correctly, today's neap tide was an especially small one. It would be one thing if kids like Wang Xiaobao and Li Xiaoyao were there, but even the adults were this idle? Jiang Han was speechless too. A lot of people in the village were still like this. But he couldn't really blame them. Who would turn down money? The ones who stayed in the village were mostly the elderly and children, and the family's income mainly came from the money earned by the young and middle-aged working away from home. If they could make a bit of money while staying in their hometown, who wouldn't be happy? A neap tide having little catch was only in comparison to a spring tide. Facts prove that as long as you were diligent enough, you could still get something. Especially these elderly people, they had plenty of experience. In just this short time, someone had already caught 1 or 2 mantis shrimp, though they were a bit small and not zebra mantis shrimp. Zhang Haidai looked at Jiang Han. What else could Jiang Han do? He could only go tida-pooling with these villagers. He walked around for a while. Because today's tide was even smaller than yesterday's, there was less seafood than yesterday. There were far fewer mantis shrimp in particular. He pulled Zhang Haidai over and pointed to a spot not far ahead. See that place? Isn't it spouting water? Zhang Haidai, being a poor student, originally should have had better eyesight than Jiang Han. But after Jiang Han awakened the system, Zhang Haidai's eyesight could no longer compare to Jiang Han's. He rubbed his eyes and looked carefully. It really does seem to be spouting water. Spouting water and having a hole meant the same thing. There was usually something underneath. Jiang Han handed the shrimp pump he had just bought yesterday to Zhang Haidai. Go dig over there. Zhang Haidai took it and went over. Jiang Han, meanwhile, took his things and walked toward a less crowded place. His scanning range was now 15 meters. This additional 5-meter range didn't seem like much, but it saved him quite a bit of effort. In the end, he stopped at one spot, because there were zebra mantis shrimp underneath here too. Meanwhile, those villagers had already surrounded Zhang Haidai. Jiang Han knew why, because the spot he had pointed out to Zhang Haidai happened to be where the mantis shrimp were clustered. Jiang Han didn't hesitate either. He spat into his palm and gripped the shrimp pump. The first time, because he didn't have good control of it, he failed to pump anything up. The second time, what came up with the mud and water was a zebra mantis shrimp. While he was at it, he pumped up another zebra mantis shrimp as well. Both of these mantis shrimp weighed over half a gene. After that, Jiang Han went to pump up those ordinary shrimp. The owner of the fishing tackle shop really hadn't lied to him. This thing was highly efficient, and it wouldn't tear the mantis shrimp apart. Compared with the rope loop used before, it was simply far better. Zebra mantis shrimp. Zebra mantis shrimp. It really is zebra mantis shrimp. At some point, the villagers had once again crowded around Jiang Han's bucket. Damn it, they had searched for so long and found a whole pile of worthless stuff, but not a single valuable thing. They had originally thought that Zhang Haidai pulling up several mantis shrimp in a row. That was already considered good luck. Who would have thought that not only were there so many large mantis shrimp in Jiang Han's bucket, but also 2 zebra mantis shrimp? Everyone knew about Jiang Han selling zebra mantis shrimp yesterday. Jiang Ermao never said in the end how much he paid in total, but it definitely wasn't a low amount. Jiang Han, how is your luck so good? College students really are different. Even when foraging by the sea, you're better than us. Jiang Han, how did you do it? Is there some trick to this? Jiang Han smiled at them. What trick? It's just good luck, that's all. People by the sea all believe in fate, and hearing Jiang Han's explanation, they found it convincing. As elders from the seaside, they had plenty of experience. They could spot air holes and water spouting holes faster than ordinary young people. But still, every dig turned up a clam. And another dig was still a clam, and they were small too, enough to make a person furious. On Jiang Ermao's side, the purchase price for clams was only 3 yuan per gene. Given today's situation, even if they foraged until high tide, whether they could gather 5 gene of clams was still a question. After digging everything up, their old backs would hurt again, and this little bit of money might not even be enough to buy medicated plasters. For those with severe rheumatism, their knees would ache for several days. Zhang Haidai was also very dumbfounded. When Jiang Han said he would take him to the shore to make a fortune, he had originally only half believed it. When he saw several water-spouting holes in the spot Jiang Han pointed out to him, he didn't think much of it. After all, it wasn't only mantis shrimp that could make water spout out, but also many other cheap catches. Who could have thought that with one pull he would catch a mantis shrimp? And this shrimp pump was highly efficient, hitting the mark with every pull. Basically, every pull brought up a mantis shrimp. The villagers were also attracted by the shrimp pump in Jiang Han's hand, and the thing in Zhang Haidai's hand seemed to be the same as well. If they had this kind of speed when digging clams, it wouldn't be a bad deal either. Jiang Han, where did you get that thing? The fishing tackle shop in town has it. Jiang Han didn't think there was any need to hide it from others. The town has this thing? Yes, but when I saw it, there weren't many left. I don't know whether the owner will restock it. Bucktooth Annie remembered that the last time she went to the fishing tackle shop, she seemed to have seen this thing, and the owner had even tried to sell it to her. She thought the owner was trying to rip her off, so she ignored him and left. Who could have thought that this newly made strange gadget would be so useful? College students really are bold. They even dare to buy something this strange. The aunties discussed it and decided that after they finished foraging by the sea, they would also go buy this magic tool. Just then, Jiang Han saw a very large and beautiful shell. This, a moon shell? The shrimp pump that had been hitting the mark every time wasn't very handy when it encountered a moon shell. Luckily, he had brought plenty of tools this time. He picked up the sand shovel and shoveled a few times, then dug out the moon shell. Isn't this a moon shell? Old man Luo looked at Jiang Han in disbelief. Jiang Han tossed the thing into the bucket. It should be a moon shell, right? Old Luo took another look. This is a moon shell. Moon shells aren't as valuable as zebra mantis shrimp, but they are heavy for their size. At the size Jiang Han's was, 4 or 5 would already make 1 gene. Dig up a few more, and you'd make a killing. When Jiang Han first started pumping for mantis shrimp, although old Luo felt uncomfortable about it, his reaction wasn't this strong. But now, he was truly having a little trouble breathing. They were both shellfish, so why was it that what Jiang Han shoveled up was a moon shell, while what he shoveled up were clams? Jiang Han reached out and steadied old Luo. Grandpa Luo, are you alright? At your age, it wouldn't be good if you got sick from anger. I'm fine. Old Luo forced himself to calm down. He refused to believe that all the good luck had gone to Jiang Han alone. Old Luo turned around and continued foraging. Zhang Haidai walked over. In his bucket, aside from the mantis shrimp Jiang Han had told him to pump out at the start, the rest were some not very valuable shellfish. But he was already very satisfied. He wanted to check on Jiang Han's situation. If things weren't going well for Jiang Han, he would comfort him a little. In any case, they hadn't made this trip for nothing. When he saw Jiang Han's bucket, his jaw practically dropped. "Hanji, is your luck really that good?" Jiang Han said he would take him to get rich by foraging at the sea, and judging by today's situation, it wasn't an exaggeration at all. Jiang Han didn't explain. He told Zhang Haidai to put the shrimp pump away and take out the sand shovel. This pump tube wasn't of much use now anyway, at least in the places he had just run through. All the mantis shrimp had already been pumped out by him. Jiang Han pointed out another spot to Zhang Haidai. "Just dig over here." Zhang Haidai looked over there and saw quite a few spots where water was bubbling up, but he had no idea what was underneath. "Hanji, your eyesight is really good." Jiang Han didn't explain, just told him to hurry up and dig, and reminded him not to break them. If they were broken, they wouldn't be worth much. Zhang Haidai rolled up his sleeves and squatted down to dig. Now he had a lot of confidence in Jiang Han. Although he was mentally prepared, when he dug this time, his eyes still widened. Moon clams. He had actually dug up moon clams too. Such big moon clams were really heavy. Seeing the villagers looking his way, Zhang Haidai was afraid they would come over to his side too. He quickly put all his strength into digging. Although he also dug up clams and the like, most of what he found were moon clams. Zhang Haidai worked very quickly. By the time the villagers finished hesitating over whether to come over and finally headed his way, he had already dug up most of the places where water was bubbling. Antli scratched her head. Could it be that Jiang Han and Zhang Haidai had been favored by the Dragon King? This luck was simply heaven-defying. Zhang Haidai found another patch to dig. But this time he wasn't so lucky, and the things he dug up started being worthless again. The villagers looked toward Jiang Han again. Seeing that every dig of his brought up a moon clam, they all headed over to Jiang Han's spot. Antli smiled at Jiang Han. "You don't mind if we dig here too, do you?" Jiang Han looked at the villagers in front of him. If he said he didn't want to, they would probably drown him in spittle. Jiang Han grinned and said, "This mudflat isn't mine. Whoever digs, digs." Antli also laughed cheerfully. She squatted down and started shoveling at the muddy spots where water was bubbling up. "Hey Han, I didn't expect someone so young like you to be so good at finding places. This little area actually has so many water holes." Antli dug 2 or 3 shovelfuls, and something came out. But it wasn't a moon clam, just a very small clam. Antli was so angry she wanted to curse. Then she saw Jiang Han's shovel come down right next to where hers had landed just now, and out came a moon clam. Antli opened her mouth, then opened it again. These two things were in the same place, so why was what she dug up the cheap stuff? Jiang Han smiled and put the moon clam into the bucket. Then he turned to dig somewhere else. Antli stared fixedly with both eyes, and when she saw him dig up 2 manila clams in a row, she finally felt a little better. How could one person stay lucky forever? But the third thing Jiang Han dug up was another moon clam, and the fourth was still a moon clam. If those 2 clams hadn't blocked these 2 moon clams, he wouldn't even have bothered to dig them up. Antli. More than an hour later, aside from Jiang Han and Zhang Haidai, who were getting more and more enthusiastic as they dug, everyone else lost more and more interest. By the time the sea foraging was over, besides the mantis shrimp from the beginning, Jiang Han and Zhang Haidai had dug up another full bucket of moon clams. The mantis shrimp filled more than half a bucket, and that bucket of moon clams was filled to overflowing. The villagers felt utterly disheartened. Could moon clams really fill a bucket to bursting? Why was it that they couldn't even dig up half a bucket of clams? Jiang Han politely waved to the villagers and said goodbye. There was about half an hour left before high tide. He was young and got tired quickly, so he needed to rest. As for the remaining half hour, whoever wanted to keep digging could go ahead. Anyway, he had already dug up most of the good stuff with speed, precision, and ruthlessness. Zhang Haidai originally didn't pay these people any mind, but seeing how polite Jiang Han was, he followed suit and said goodbye to the villagers as well. Looking at these 2 such polite young men, the villagers felt both gratified and depressed. Could it really be that they were old, and both their strength and luck had drained away with age? Old Luo sighed. Why couldn't their luck rub off on him a little? Jiang Han and Zhang Haidai carried the 2 buckets back to Jiang Han's house first. Since Zhang Haidai didn't know what was under the mudflat, he dug up quite a few clams while digging for moon clams. They sorted out those clams and also picked out 5 broken shell moon clams. There were 2 big, full bowls of clams, and the moon clams weighed over a jin as well. They could keep these to eat themselves. Jiang Han said. Zhang Haidai nodded. These really wouldn't sell for much. This whole trip to the shore felt like a dream to Zhang Haidai. He had always had terrible luck when he went fishing with others. They came back with buckets overflowing while he came back empty-handed. But this time, under Han Ji's arrangement, he had actually dug up so much good stuff. In truth, Jiang Han himself was also a little dazed. He was the type who worried a lot. And after breaking up with Yi Tian, he felt even more insecure. He always felt that heaven would take his system back at any moment. It wasn't until he got to the seaside and actually saw all that seafood that his heart settled a little. Hanji, should we carry the rest of this to Uncle Ermao's place? No rush. Let's eat a late-night snack first. These things won't die anytime soon. Someone had probably already told Jiang Ermao about them digging up good stuff. If they went to sell it to him as soon as they found it, it would make them seem too eager. Jiang Ermao wouldn't offer too high a price either. Besides, they had dinner at 3, and it was already 9:30 now. He was really hungry. Zhang Haidai was now full of energy and volunteered to go cook. Boiled clams and steamed moon clams. Good ingredients often only need the simplest preparation. Looking at those moon clams, Zhang Haidai felt a bit regretful. He had obviously already been very careful while digging, yet he still ended up breaking a few shells. By comparison, Han Ji was much more impressive. He had dug up so many moon clams without breaking a single shell. Jiang Han felt the time was about right, so he and Zhang Haidai each carried a bucket to Jiang Ermao's house. Jiang Ermao had already been getting ready for bed, but when he saw what Jiang Han had brought, all sleepiness instantly vanished. These are moon clams. Jiang Ermao wasn't shocked that Jiang Han had dug up moon clams. He was shocked that Jiang Han had dug up so many moon clams during a neap tide. Anyone who didn't know better would think he had gone into some moon clam farm. Jiang Ermao picked up a moon clam and took a look. It was indeed wild. This luck was just too heaven-defying. Yesterday, he had just brought over 5 premium zebra mantis shrimps, and today he had brought over so many moon clams. And in the other bucket, there were also 2 zebra mantis shrimps. He weighed the 2 zebra mantis shrimps one by one. One was 5.2 liang, and the other was 5.7 liang. Both were over half a jin. He then weighed the remaining ordinary mantis shrimps. After deducting the weight of the seawater and the bucket, they weighed 12 jin in total. As for those moon clams, they weighed 35 jin. I'll sell the mantis shrimp to you at the original price. These moon clams are really big, so I'll give you 90 yuan per jin. Jiang Ermao wasn't used to the calculator on his phone, so he took out an old-fashioned calculator and punched away noisily. In the end, the calculator itself announced the number, 4,452. Zhang Haidai was dumbfounded. Is it really that much? Although he didn't sell his catch to Jiang Ermao, he was better informed than the old folks in the village about some things. Jiang Ermao didn't have a very good reputation. Whenever he could force the price down, he would spare no effort in doing so. But the price he offered today was obviously not low. He glanced at Jiang Han again. Brother Han really was impressive. Even an old hand like Jiang Ermao didn't dare try to take advantage of him. Cash or mobile transfer. In this respect, Jiang Ermao was quite up to date. The older people in the village all liked using cash, and many of them didn't even know how to use a smartphone. Young people were different. Like yesterday, just transfer it to me. 1 minute later, those 4,452 yuan arrived on Jiang Han's phone. The host sold seafood for 4,452 yuan and received 4,452 system points. Does the host want to exchange for skin range? Jiang Han was really too lazy to respond to this system. Based on his last experience, was there any difference between choosing to exchange and choosing not to? Ding. The host has defaulted to exchanging for a 5-meter scan range. Exchange successful. The host now has a 20-meter scan range. Exchange successful. 2,500 system points deducted. 1952 system points remaining. The host needs 548 more system points to exchange for the next 5-meter scan range. Jiang Han was speechless. He knew it. His opinion didn't matter. But this also made him understand one thing. He had to have a full 2,500 points to exchange for a 5-meter scan range. When he had fewer than 2,500 points, the points would be temporarily saved. Jiang Han immediately transferred 450 yuan to Zhang Haidai as well. After seeing the money, Zhang Haidai was still a little stunned. What he had said last time was that he wanted a share of the profits. What he had originally thought was, if Brother Han earned 20, he'd earn 2. If Brother Han earned 30, he'd earn 3. He had never imagined the number would approach 2 digits, much less 3 digits. Brother Han, isn't this too much? Could someone like him really make over 100 yuan a day? And even at 10%, it would only be 445 yuan. Just rounding it up for you. Jiang Han patted Zhang Haidai on the shoulder, telling him to accept it without worry. I'll also be going shore foraging tomorrow, so pay your uncle back. Zhang Haidai opened his mouth, then nodded again. Now that he had this money, he really didn't need his uncle's money anymore. At worst, if he ran out of money later, he'd just borrow from his uncle again. His uncle treated him pretty well, at least better than his parents did. Thinking of how Jiang Han had bought Barbie dolls for his two little nieces last time, he felt that when he went to his uncle's house, he should also buy some fruit for his uncle. Jiang Han and Zhang Haidai each went home. After giving more than 400 yuan to Zhang Haidai, Jiang Han still had 4,000 yuan left. Looking at the bare old house, he always felt he couldn't go on like this forever. If he were developing his career elsewhere, that would be one thing. But now that he stayed in his hometown every day, he had to at least make his home more comfortable. But that required money. And he also wanted a boat of his own. If nothing unexpected happened this year, the fishing ban would end at noon on September 16th. In other words, there were still more than 2 months left before the fishing ban period ended. The climate on the island was changeable. If he ran into typhoons or heavy rain, there was no way he could go shore foraging. On average, he didn't even know whether he could make 2,000 yuan a day. Even if he made 2,000 yuan a day, in 2 months that would only be 120,000. Jiang Han didn't know how much a boat cost now, so he looked it up online, and there were all kinds of claims. To know for sure, he'd still have to go to a shipyard and take a look. Their small island didn't have a shipyard, but there was one over by the coastal port. There also weren't many people in the village who owned boats. He didn't know whether they would be willing to sell him a boat either. Thinking of the few fish traps he had bought, it was now the fishing moratorium, so he definitely couldn't set them out. When the fishing moratorium ends, there also seems to be a regional scope. It's not as if fish traps can be set anywhere.